everything. But I'm on standby with all my cough drops and everything, you know. So
I think we sniffle our way through pretty much every episode.
Yeah.
well, Brandon, what's the temperature there? I have to ask.
I think it's about 40 where I'm at.
49 where I'm
Yeah,
at.
you're a little warmer down in the valley.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. So, on that note, we'll go ahead and get started because it is not 40 degrees here. It got to 91 degrees here yesterday in Texas.
Jesus.
You know, it's I've got the blazer on, but by the time I go outside, I'm definitely taking this off and whatnot. You know,
I was out pulling the tarp off the picnic table and stuff on our break because we've been recording all day.
Yeah.
Um, so one down, two to go.
All right, well, good stuff. Good stuff. Well, hopefully, I won't keep y'all too long and everything. Well, hey, y'all, welcome to the Undone Podcast. I appreciate y'all coming on.
Yeah, glad to be here. This has been we've been chatting back and forth for a couple of weeks, and I got to say, most Texas emails ever.
Yeah.
They're like, could be four sentences, but it's got 37 y'alls. And I started a batch of chili last night just so I'd fit in.
Or I was showing you earlier, I got the Bernie Sanders lapel pin just to show.
Yeah, reaching out.
And you know, I like talking about, you know, the regional differences between Texas and Vermont and the Northeast. It has been the last year. There's no time existing in coronavirus, right? And it's,
Yeah.
And for y'all, let me ask y'all this. You know, starting with Lily, how was your 2020?
So I work in the theater industry, so pretty shit. I actually was working on a show and everything got shut down. We came in and then it was done. And then I had another job, so I fell back on that, which was really nice. But I know a lot of my brothers and sisters, they don't have other jobs, and so they kind of scrambled, and a lot of us went into like carpentry, or just on unemployment waiting for theater to come back.
Mm-hmm.
But I, as my dad says, I can't sit still, so I currently have 3 jobs, and I go to the gym and I do this podcast. So,
I was gonna say, I thought the podcast was going to be one of them. If anything,
No,
no.
Which is why we set aside whole days to just record all day. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Lucas?
It's been a mixed bag. So, where I am, my wife and I this last year bought a small homestead in Vermont. We got about 10 and a half acres. We grow a lot of our own food, and that takes up a lot of my time. But I also, to pay the mortgage, have a crappy retail job, and that has been a nightmare. Like I'm back in therapy kind of nightmare. So it's the anxiety levels and of people not complying with anything related to the virus. I have to wake up in the morning and do a health check on my phone before I can go to work. And like I literally, the computer will not let me clock in unless I have answered a questionnaire swearing that I don't have said virus. And so, you know, on one hand, I'm rolling down the hill to this crap job, and on the other hand, I'm sitting in the middle of nowhere, absolutely beautiful, writing very silly podcast episodes.
Well, I love them. I love them. And I love Jaws Pink Tax episode in the gym.
Oh, Lily did a great job on that one.
You know, and I want y'all to respond to a statement. And first word that comes to your mind, or first couple of words: America is the best country in the world.
Nope. Nope. Yeah, no, can't. I can't get on board with that statement at all.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to get right into it, I'll often introduce myself as a leftist nut job. Like it's not the best country in the world, but they are very successfully using capitalism. I can say that. You know, if you're tired and scared that you can't pay your rent, then you can't tear the system down. So
It makes it a little hard when you got to be at the 9 to 5 and
yeah,
structurally tear the system down by the end of the night.
yep. Um,
Oh yeah, I just
no, I think America has potential to be a wonderful country. It's populated with wonderful people. It is a wonderful landscape uh, set on a broken system.
Mhm.
yes, I would agree with that. I actually just got into a discussion the other day with one of my coworkers about gun control because the Colorado shooting had just happened, and our country does not have control. Like it doesn't. Anyone who's like, oh yeah, these are the systems in place, and I'm like, no, don't talk to me.
Well,
I'm already getting red faced. I already
so let me interject for a second because, as you both know, I'm in Texas.
Yep.
I'm a lefty as well. I voted for Bernie Sanders not only in 2020, wrote his name in, and then 2016 I wrote him in there as well. But in Texas, guns are everywhere. I'm a gun owner. Guns are embedded in Texas culture and seem to be embedded at large in the United States culture.
Very much in Vermont
yes,
as well.
yes, Vermont,
But
New Hampshire,
it's
huge.
well,
gun.
yeah, New Hampshire's the live free or die state.
They have they're open carry though.
Yeah.
You can walk into a Walmart with your gun in the back of your pants, which I don't understand because someone could literally just take it out of the back of your pants. I literally stood and stared at this man for a solid 2 minutes thinking about this because I was like, why did this make sense to you?
Yeah. Well, with that being said, I mean, this is how we know things are going back to normal. When
Yeah.
I don't even, because I'm already expecting, I imagine y'all are already expecting the next one to happen.
Yeah.
What do y'all think is the solution? At the very least, what I know is that the current track that we're on, by putting our hands up and saying, well, hey, we can't do anything, there's nothing we can do, is not the solution because it's leading to more unnecessary
I
death.
wish I could remember who wrote this. I saw it this morning or yesterday. But I think to get a gun, you should only be able to do it one day a year or one day every 2 years. And when you're standing in line, nobody can give you water. And if it's such a right, uh,
Oh. So actually this was part of my conversation. It was, I think we should ban automatic and semi-automatic weapons and have like an exchange. So you like bring in your weapons and they give you a certain amount of money or
broadsword.
And then I was like, and then as a bonus you get a gun safe for all your other weapons that you haven't traded in. So like, but like I think it was Australia or New Zealand, they did that.
Australia.
And there's been no mass shootings since they did that.
Yep, and all it took
And
was a bunch of dead kids.
They didn't ban all guns. They just banned, semi-automatic weapons and like, I don't think that a shotgun should be banned because honestly, it'd be so awkward if you were trying to shoot up something using a shotgun. You'd be like, hold on, gotta reload, And by that time, someone will tackle you. So I'm in the boat that the government really needs to step up and create a program.
I'm not anti-gun per se, especially considering where I live and how I supplement my income by growing food and selling food and if there's a literal fox in the hen house, I have to do something about it. And, a good stern talking to isn't effective with a fox.
You can't just go, no, like you dog, like, don't do that again. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, so why, other than like the prevalence of guns in America, it seems like we just talked about, there are guns in Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland, Sweden. There's another, I imagine a few more industrialized nations that I can name off the top of my head. It seems to be a uniquely American problem, though. Is it, what if culturally speaking, do you think Americans are violent?
Yes. In a word, yes. Um,
Wow.
Entitled. I think that I think that it really stems from the right to bear arms. I have the right to own a gun. It comes from the right. I have the right. So it's entitlement. They're like, I have this right. And that just the ego. I think that is really a part of it, is that like we really play on America's the best country. We're awesome. We have the right to do this and this and this. And it really inflates, and we're driven in our education system to love America.
Mm-hmm.
And like
I can never say this.
Indoctrination.
Thank you. I can never get that one out.
And it's true. We start from kindergarten, pledge allegiance.
Mm-hmm.
I pledge allegiance to the flag. Now, what other thing has done that in history?
Right.
I'm just gonna put that one out there as like, what other group did that?
Mm-hmm.
And just we'll let that settle in.
Well, you know, to jump into that subject, this is really why I wanted to bring y'all on. Is you know, there's two components of this question I have. First, you know, one, y'all being an education podcast, hell,
Education, quote unquote.
with the twist, right?
Yes.
And it seems that, you know, whether it was doing this podcast, I have learned just as much as I did in college, if not more. In fact, talking and having conversations with people. So for y'all, one, did y'all see a lack in people's, you know, learned ability to where they're just drones in their 9 to 5s or their retail jobs or service jobs that they shut off? What is motivating y'all to do this?
Well, and tell me if I'm wrong, Lily, but like both of us have these personalities where we do love learning. And at the sort of beginning of our friendship, we were constantly sending interesting things back and forth to each other. And I've been sitting on the idea of partial credit for a while, trying to find somebody to work on this with. And
I think we just we really wanted to engage each other in conversation more than the time we had allotted. And it was mostly that we're like, hey, do other people think like this? Do other people like want to learn like this? Do other people delve into a subject and just go for it and don't sleep at night because they're so enthralled into that subject?
Mm-hmm.
We give each other assignments, and she sent me something last week to tell me to write a small piece about it, and I'm down a rabbit hole, and I don't know how to write the 10-minute part that she wants.
I know. I've definitely done that, and he's like, "Oh, here, say this like 2-minute thing," and I'm like, "But I know all of this other stuff that just like." I'm like waiting in the background, and I think that's what's great about our play on each other, is because we can interject and be like, hey, but what about this random fact? But as a whole, I do believe our education system lets great things like our upcoming episode go through the cracks. Like a great inventor, no one knows a lot about him.
Mm-hmm.
Or pink tax, that's a huge thing, especially as a woman, and especially just like growing up in a patriarchal society, like something you should be aware of.
Yeah.
And that's really what motivates me, is just getting that awareness out there and educating people, and hoping we get those people who are like us and want to expand our knowledge and just love to learn.
Yeah, and she's mentioned an upcoming episode, and it's why do we learn so much about Edison but not Tesla?
This is
you know, because
spoil it.
No,
because Edison had the money and Tesla died penniless.
Yeah.
Edison had the money to promote himself. Edison had the money to manipulate the information to get himself into the history books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
and one thing that I want to expand in our podcast is definitely overseas history. In our school systems, we rarely talk about European history.
Yeah.
Like, I was talking to my mom and I was like, so where in history did you get? And she was like, we probably got to World War One. And I was like, there's a lot. There's
About
World
80
War
years.
Two.
Yeah.
Like, there was a huge war after that.
Yeah.
And we, as in my history class, we just got to the end of World War Two. So, and she was amazed by that. But we only talked about America's influence in World War II.
Yeah, no, I think that the saying "those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it." I think it's increasingly true. And I say that because in the Roaring Twenties, as I imagine you'll know, there's everything was good, everything was great, up until Standard Oil and the public utility companies started robbing us from the back door, and they were selling stocks that were absolutely worthless, and farmers were getting bent over by the banks, and
all the trusts were
Yep.
popping up everywhere.
and I did a show last night with a guy that I think leans more on the right, and that's libertarian. And when you talk about these things, these ideas of breaking up these monopolistic and monopsonistic entities, we've done it before. Whether it's the rising cost of college, whether it's the big tech, or whatever other oligarchy or monopoly you want to talk about. And when you tell people, are y'all familiar with pizza, not pizza, pizza? That is, or go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, educate me.
Yeah, so that is the Program for International Student Assessment. And so that is given every 10 years to 15-year-old students that test them in math, reading, and science. And I imagine y'all seen the show The Newsroom?
I've watched, I think, one episode.
I don't think I've seen it.
I don't really have a lot of time.
Well, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. And so essentially that guy goes on a rant and talking about how America isn't the best country in the world because out of the 37 industrialized countries in the world, the United States only ranks in the top 10 in reading. In 2018, we ranked 8th in reading.
Yeah.
And in math, do y'all
I'm
know
actually
where
surprised it's that good.
We're low.
Yeah, we're number
Yeah.
30. Number 30. And in science, where do y'all think we are at?
Probably like
Out of
20.
how many countries?
Out of 37.
Out of 37?
Or probably 20.
Yeah, I'd say dancing around 20.
I was surprised when I read this one myself. We ranked 11th, up from
Oh.
17, up from 17 in 2015. So,
Good for the kids in the science.
Exactly. But when we talk about these stats, I don't think that actually diagnoses the problem. If y'all could diagnose the problem, why are our students doing so poorly amongst their international peers? What do y'all think it is?
I can't remember her name. It's going to drive me crazy, but it's Tupac Shakur's aunt. She was actually a Black Panther. She's still on the run.
Oh my gosh.
Still on the run. I think there's like a $2 million bounty, but loosely quoting her, they're never going to give you the tools you need to overthrow the system. They're not going to educate you because that puts them at risk. So if you limit the access to knowledge, if you keep the working class stupid, and I'm not saying that the working class is stupid. I am the working class, but if you keep people without education, they can overthrow you.
Yeah. It's Gloria Cox. I had to Google it.
Thank you.
So I think it's partly that, and partly we throw so much money into the military.
Mm-hmm.
So much money. And we do not fund teachers enough at all. I'm sorry, but the fact that they get paid nothing, basically nothing, a barely livable wage to teach 30 children who all learn in different ways.
Yeah.
And they're spread too thin. And as So I think this was happening as I was going through school. They were closing down schools, and they've been closing down schools, especially in rural areas like Vermont, where kids have to now be bused an hour to a school. And I don't think that's a great way, because what happens is they have that hour ride home, and then they have to do homework, and they're just fried. They're just fried. And I was talking to a 14-year-old the other day, and I went, "How was school?" And she goes, "Ugh," like a 14-year-old does.
Yep.
And I go, "What's the problem?" Like, I'm like, what's happening? She's like, "I'm learning the same stuff." We teach the kids from like elementary school to middle school the same thing. We just drill it into their head. And it's just this, and I was thinking back, and I went, I learned the same thing until high school. And then all of my high school teachers were like, "Wait, you don't know this? Didn't they teach you this in middle school?" And I was like, "No, they didn't. They taught us the same thing every single year, and I don't know anything. And now you're looking at me like I'm an idiot, and I'm not." And then the same thing happens in college. They're like, "You didn't learn this in high school?" And I'm like, "No, I learned like this much," because they had to reteach what we were supposed to be learning in middle school. Now, I have been educated in 1, 2, 3, 4 different states.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got held back moving from Idaho.
Oh, you're
to New
fired
York.
from the podcast.
You didn't know this, but I got held back because my reading level was so low, because I was in a mixed class in 5th grade. So it was 5th and 6th graders, and they expected everyone to be reading at a 6th grade level, and I was not. I was, yeah. And so
do you still struggle at all with it?
yeah,
or
I have to sound out all of my words.
is that
And
why you stick with audiobooks mostly?
yeah,
Oh, that
no,
makes sense,
actually,
though.
because I do have a little dyslexia.
All good.
So when I read something, I have to go slower, or I like stutter when I read it out loud. So when you ask me to read stuff out loud, I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll do that," and practice it like 1,000 times, and I'll still mess it up. Because my brain also processes the words faster than I can say them.
Huh.
And I don't know what that is, but they told me that. I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm like 8,000 steps ahead." And this is before I could drink coffee. So now I'm on coffee, and it's like 3,000 steps ahead.
You can feel
I
the
can like
energy.
feel the words, you know. But I think that's part of the problem, is just there's no funding. I went on a huge tangent. I'm very sorry.
I'm loving it. What do you think part of the problem is?
Yeah, that's, I think, biggest problem is funding, and just literally lack of education about education. And how important it is. And I think that has to do with what Lucas said, is they don't want people to be too smart.
It's easier. It makes their jobs easier.
Yeah.
So just what's left out of history, the subject, again, subjugation, holding down of native peoples, eradicating them, like the real stories from our history, is really troubling to me, and a big influence in my writing on the show.
Like, did you guys learn about the internment camps in the U.S. during
Don't
World
call
War
them
II?
internment camps. They were concentration camps.
They were.
That is branding.
They were concentration camps. I was being nice.
I had a good history teacher, so yeah, I did.
I also did, because I was in Hawaii at the time. But if I was in New York, I don't think I would have learned that.
I follow George Takei on Twitter, so I know all about that.
His comic is great. You should read it.
You told me this, yeah.
Yeah.
I think a part of it is, you could go back to Woodrow Wilson and the Espionage Act, that was utilized to pretty much prevent the press from reporting on anything that was anti-American.
Yep.
And that included the Spanish flu, as we both know, that the Spanish flu didn't start in Spain. It started in Kansas. And it spread, on the front lines of Western Europe via the U.S. military. And so
The infallible U.S. military.
You know, and I think for me in particular, there's two pulling forces that COVID showed us. On one hand, that everything that they told us that wasn't possible is in fact possible, and
Yeah.
and on the other hand, the political will to do so is another problem. You know, there's last year leading up to the 2020 election, I did a mini poll, 155 people, and I asked them a series of questions. And I wanted to know what was on their minds. You know, and so I'm gonna ask y'all this. I want you to transplant yourselves to what seems like yesterday for me, because it's just like one thing after another after another. You know, November election, then you've got COVID cases getting worse, and December, then January 6th happened, and then
Yeah.
Biden was inaugurated, and it just seems that the country is coming more apart. You know, as right now, it's funny. Like you were talking about in retail, I can only imagine the amount of people that come into those stores that are abusing and harassing these frontline service workers. You know.
I was specifically called a fascist prick.
Oh, I thought that I needed to find Jesus.
and, and so I hear things like this, and if I could diagnose something, I think things really started going wrong in the 80s, because if you pull up a graph of the 1981 Reagan tax cuts, it's correlation going down the tax burden on our top income earners. And then
Lily, Reagan is a president he was
Oh my
president
God.
before you were born.
Really? I had no idea.
and that's the thing, is that Reagan gets spared in the media. He really does. When in fact, like I've people who know me tell me, they'll say that Will's going to speak his mind. Well, I believe Reagan destroyed the United States, and the reason being is because he pretty much ingrained this bootstraps culture, this individualistic cultural mindset that is on you. The onus is on the American person to do well, that the government should not provide a floor for Americans. The pretty much denigrating people who take social welfare queens, came from him.
Yeah.
So anyways, we pull this graph up that slopes downward. And then on another graph, we can see deaths of despair starting in the 90s, raising. In the 1970s, they plateau, 80s, they tick up, and then the 90s, they just skyrocket. And so deaths of despair are defined as, alcoholism, deaths like liver cirrhosis. God, that's a hard word for me. And, maybe I've been drinking, but opioid overdoses and suicides have been on the rise for the last 20, 30 years.
Well, that is specifically linked to Reagan with the shutting down of mental health facilities, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the 80s?
Yeah.
And to be fair, I do want to say it's not Reagan's fault. It's the people that were puppeting a deranged, brain softened individual.
He literally had dementia and Alzheimer's. I
Yep.
forget what book it was that goes in depth into that, but
Yep. And
it's
mommy had to tell him what to do.
Yeah.
it's problematic. It's problematic because people don't know these things.
Yep.
But if I could diagnose anything about COVID, is that we saw that one, people can work from home if they want. However, there's a unintentional consequence of that, because we're living through the fourth industrial revolution right now. In 20 years, I asked my dad this, who's been a truck driver his whole life, do you think that your job will be around in 20 years? And he laughed and he said, no, it won't be around in 10.
Wow.
And it's crazy how fast things are changing. Our computers are actually, our smartphones have as much computing power as the Challenger spaceship.
It's really fun to go to space museums and be
Yeah.
like, hold your phone up and be like, haha, the same thing, right?
Gotcha.
And we're living in a time of Bitcoin and NFTs, and electric vehicles. And if you told me when I was a kid watching Dragon Ball Z after class that I would be living in this Jetson-like future, I wouldn't have believed you because I didn't realize how different things were going to be. And
Oh, fast.
I'm still waiting for my hoverboard though. Sorry.
you know those kids going on those little electric wheelies.
Okay, those things freak me out, and I do not have the balance for those. And if you know anything, I literally fell in my house on roller skates and was in a sling for. Yes, it was winter, okay, and I wanted to roller skate, and so yeah, those things freak me out.
And so with all that micro rant of mine and
Mhm.
whatnot, that we now Americans now see that things are possible. The Overton window has shifted. That hey, what I learned in college, which at the time was unconditional basic income, now universal, is the most popular policy legislation in modern American history. People actually seeing that the government can do something for them and change their lives. And now going back to the question, if y'all could transplant yourselves to October of 2020, what were the top 5 issues on the ballot for you in order of importance from 1 to 5? Number 1 being the most important, number 5 being the least important.
I have been so thoroughly fried since then, Will.
I know. I'm like, what happened? Like, I like.
What were my
literally
top
have
5
to-
yesterday?
Yeah.
Honestly, again, this goes to where it was all small town stuff. It was walking into, there's 750 people in my town, and every little change makes it a big ripple. And being new to that, my wife and I, we really focused on our immediate local issues. I can't say outside of the election and the whitewashing of sexual harassment and abuse of women by people in power. I couldn't think of anything else other than becoming part of involved in my local government.
Mhm.
So, mine
Definitely
was
not the answer you were looking for.
It's okay. It's okay.
I'd say my biggest thing was closing the wage gap. Is really, that's one of the biggest things. As a person who is in a union, I get paid equally to the men, but I've had experiences where I have not been paid equally.
Mhm.
And it's really shitty. Like, you're like, I did like 3 times the work than that dude. Like, why? So that was one of the biggest things. I think that I was on the like, let's give people reduced college rates, let's give people free college. Like, I was on that train. I was on the but I don't think that's going to happen. Climate change was a huge thing for me. Climate change.
What did your poll show? Were people's?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was number in the top 3. COVID was always in the top 3. It was typically 1 or 2 and whatnot. On number 3 and down, you start to get a little bit more partisan. So the top 2 was always COVID. Number 2 was typically the economy and how do we get the economy back. But number 3 and down, I think, became more personal issues. The politics became more local at that point. And so there are answers like anything from fuel prices, how do we get fuel prices down? Number 4 was, in rural America, I think I paint myself as a left-wing populist more than anything. And I think, William Jennings Bryan, great presidential candidate in 1896. I don't think he should have lost to William McKinley. But I'm not going to hold that against them. I'm still salty 100. And
I'm writing a Thomas Jefferson episode right now, and I'm just
wonderful.
incensed daily.
Oh yeah.
Wonderful. And I think something that that I learned more importantly is that people wanted to talk about what is affecting them. That they felt like they didn't have a voice. that nobody wanted to listen to them, whether it was their city councilman, whether it was their mayor, whether it was, their congressman, their state congressman, and even up into the federal level where they felt most disattachment from anything. These would go on for a long time. We're talking, 45 minutes to in one case like an hour and a half, and like I'm like, hey buddy, like I I got I gotta go.
Gotta go.
And I honestly do feel that, the social cohesion of Americans. I mean, that's coming apart because people aren't having these conversations anymore. That we're trapped in our bubbles to where they are quote unquote safe spaces to where we don't put our ideas on the marketplace of ideas. That we find like-minded people that essentially like are gonna always agree with each other. And whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know. But I think if we continue to not having serious conversations about the world we live in and the country we live in, things are going to get worse. Things are going to get much
Oh
worse.
yeah, yeah,
We're
I
we're
agree.
we're on the trend for sure of things being worse before they're
Oh
better.
yeah,
Um,
we're already going down that hill.
I hope to be part of the world where it's better. Um,
We all do.
and
If there's a world left,
So
I'm just gonna put that out there.
the one that surprised me the most was in rural West Texas, where I did most of this polling. Was climate change was actually up in the top five more times than not.
well, it's so obvious at this point. Like it's
I mean, honestly, you guys just literally you had a winter in Texas. You guys had a huge winter storm, and I'm up in rural Vermont going. So climate change?
No,
Like, yeah, that's a thing, guys.
Yeah.
That's why that's happening. Yeah, it
Yeah.
affects everybody.
I got invited to a panel to talk on climate change, and my outlook on climate change is pretty bleak. If we were to stop, carbon, polluting today, like literally zero emissions today, we would still see a 3 degree to a 4 degree raise in global temperatures. That is absolutely catastrophic.
Mhm.
It was funny because the guy who went before me talking, he was like, "Oh yeah, like we plastic straws and no plastic bags and we're gonna get rid of single-use plastics." I think that's a red herring, because the onus shouldn't be put on the people. 90% of CO2 emissions come from Fortune 500 companies and whatnot, and of those, to try to place that on the fault of people, I think is absolutely absurd. It's
yeah, what Nestle is doing to the water table in the West is insane. It's
We're fun fact. We're gonna run out of water before we run out of oil.
no way.
Yeah,
oh, this is new to me.
we're
So
it's just we're running out of water.
I'm a
Like
little
this.
alarmed.
This
So I
is
spent 10 years I spent 10 years in California, and right before that I lived in Oregon. Now there was something on the ballot about allowing water to go down to California, and I was like, fuck that, and I voted against it. And then I was down in California later, and there's no
no
water.
water. There's
Like
no water. That so if you look at that river that feeds like California, Colorado, Arizona, and it also used to feed Mexico, it's dried up. Mexico is not getting water anymore.
right. Yeah,
And
it's
there's been a water war, I will call it, where I think it was Arizona and another state, maybe Nevada, that they like went to the border of the river with tanks and literally just stared at each other because they wanted rights over that water. That
the
is how
Bush
bad.
family owns water rights in South America.
Yeah,
What the hell?
that's
God,
so.
Bush.
I know, it's like and some water.
But look at my paintings.
Oh my God! You don't stand for nothing. You don't stand for anything.
Yeah.
God, I miss that guy now, though. That's the sad thing.
I'll take
I would take him any day.
yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna run out of like fresh water. There are places like Dubai that have started a salt water facility where they take salt water and they
Desalinization
reverse
plants.
osmosis or whatever
Yeah,
it's called.
desalinization
Yeah.
plants. Yeah.
And they're starting to crop up, but it's a serious issue.
They also have their own
Because-
environmental impact. They're not.
Yeah. Oh God, no, they're not great. Oh no, but we're gonna run out of water. Like this is.
It is a extremely nihilistic. I have a nihilistic, fatalistic viewpoint on
Oh,
climate
yeah.
change, and and I don't mean to be apathetic about it. I think that we should be good stewards of our environment. We should do everything in our power to reverse the damage that we've done. And in this panel that I did, they're asking these questions like, "Hey, what can we do? To let people know." Well, the first Earth Day was in 1976. What have we not been doing to make sure that people are aware? And I honestly think that we have to address the system itself, the system of capitalism. The green capitalism is an oxymoron. This infinite growth, system that we have just doesn't make sense. Eventually, we will, we're all going to work for Amazon one day. It looks like, and so, what are we going to do when, hey, we run out of water? What are we going to do when we have climate refugees coming from Mexico, from Texas, and moving up north? When the entire coastline of the East Coast is going to go all the way into Georgia. This isn't hyperbolic speech. This is, by 2100. And it is a very bleak outlook. And I honestly, why do y'all think people don't care? Like, I've noticed more and more that they're like, hey, it's getting hotter. And
Usually
I lost
doesn't-
power for 4 days.
yeah.
No big deal.
it usually doesn't directly affect them enough for them to care. Is
Yeah.
what I've noticed.
Lack of empathy.
Yeah, exactly. They're very self-absorbed. As a human race, we're very self-absorbed.
Mhm.
You think of yourself before you think of anybody else, and that's part of the problem. Is just they don't care. Doesn't affect them. It just doesn't dawn on them.
Yeah.
But and we were kind of talking about this before you jumped on the call, Lily, but Will was unaware. If you walk into a Home Depot or Lowe's right now, there's no drywall. There's no electrical conduit. There's no, we're running out of supplies because they've been diverted. We're at the end of the supply chain out here, and things are along the supply chain are being diverted to Texas and to California to help them recover from their particular disasters. And so people aren't realizing that it does affect them, that the price of a very basic piece of plywood that should normally be, in October. let's go back to-
2x4 is like $5. It's like $6 almost. It's like $6.97 or something like that.
Well,
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, a piece of, call it OSB, oriented strand board, which goes underneath roofing,
Mhm.
would be $8 back in October, is $45 right now out in Vermont and New Hampshire.
Wow.
That same board in Southern California is around $50 right now. And this is environmental impact. This is what's happening. And if people don't see it, they just complain about it and pay the money, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they'll just be like, "Why is this so expensive?" And you're like, "I don't know." Like,
Would you like
for
to
the
open up a Lowe's credit
environment,
card?
would you like to sign up for a credit card? Like, no, this God, credit cards. Anyways,
I like turning her red.
I know. Like, "Arr."
It seems that the state of things are going to get you more and more red.
Yes,
No.
actually, I just I was talking to my mom about the education system, and we were on the way driving to get her vaccinated,
Mhm.
or we were on the way back. I don't know what it was, but she was like, we should change the subject, because I was like, I think I was going really fast too, because I was just like anger pressing on the gas.
Don't Paul Walker, please.
Yeah. No, actually, her car has that lane alert
Oh,
where
okay.
it's like beep beep beep. It doesn't beep, it vibrates your steering wheel, which is the weirdest thing in the world.
I
You're
would
like, "Oh."
freak out.
That bothers the hell out of me. I feel like
My truck has roll up windows. That would freak me out.
I love it. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, how do y'all think we turn this around? How do we turn our education system around, our economic system around? Like, because if we don't, as we all know, things are just going to get worse. We're going to get another Donald Trump. We're going to
I
get,
think Germany's a great example
okay, why?
because they tell the truth.
Okay.
You know, they teach the Holocaust. They they admit it. Oh, a puppy.
Hi,
Sorry.
dog.
We're all dog
Did
people.
y'all see him?
Yes, just his little eyes.
Yeah, that's
So
Chance. That's my son, and he wanted to join the climate change talk. So,
Hello, welcome. This affects you too.
but it's small change. It's actually admitting what we did and trying to be better. And
Yeah, I think we need to educate kids on not just what America has done great, what we have conquered, what we have done. Whoa,
what we've done
yeah.
wrong.
But like, hello, we also put people in cages. Like, hello, we are
We
also
still put people
shitty
in
people.
cages.
Oh, we still put people in cages. And it's also it's not whitewashing it.
Yeah,
No.
literally.
Not whitewashing it.
No, I agree.
Cannot stress that enough.
Well, why do you think we whitewash things? Does it just make it more palatable, or
Mostly because it's a dirty part of our history, and most of the stuff is because we slaughtered people and killed people, and they're like, no, we didn't do that.
We gave them
Don't look at that.
blankets.
We look, they had houses, and we didn't do that. We gave them like their own little land and education, and no, we destroyed all of their land, and it just it's really bringing that into the light that we really need to do, is bringing all the horrific stuff and not lying to ourselves
The
about,
hard truths.
yeah.
I've because when we have these conversations, when we talk about the U.S. education system continuing to fail millions and millions of more Americans every year, leaving them behind, or wealth inequality. I believe it's what is it? So boomers control a majority of the wealthy in the United States. I believe they have $59.6 trillion of the wealth. They hold 10 times as much more wealth than millennials, whereas millennials only control 4.6%. And then they control 2 times more than Gen X. And like pointing these stats out, it's not just like, hey, it is diagnosing a problem, like whether it's wealth inequality, the gender pay gap, or our education system. It's like something overrides partisans' brains, that it was it the amygdala response where they just get angry, and and yeah.
You'll
It,
occasionally hear us reference a guy that I work with as just the red
Yes,
hat, and that's his
the red
immediate
hat.
reaction
Red
to
hat.
everything. Is if you, yeah, he's very upset about who got what cartoon got canceled recently, Pepe Le Pew or something.
Oh, that's
Well,
right.
he was upset about Mr. Potato, or the
Maybe
potato.
Oh yes, potato. I mean, and all it is anger, and it's really interesting. And as I've watched him over months and months and months and months and months and months
it's
of
not
this,
a discussion.
he's
It's more
afraid.
yelling at you. It's like, you're wrong, and you're like, but why am I wrong? Like,
Yeah.
no. Like, I would like to have a discussion with you about this. Like, I'd like to have a conversation. They're not open to it.
Actually, this is relevant. It's not going to feel like it's relevant at first, but do either of you know who Topsy the elephant is?
Yes.
You do, because I know
I don't.
we left this out of our Tesla episode.
We did.
Okay. Tell me about Topsy the elephant.
Topsy the elephant was an elephant. It was a problematic elephant. It actually hurt like 4 people and shouldn't have been in this zoo. Was like 1904, I think. But Edison, to hold on to his money stream of patents with DC current, would take animals and put them on an electric pad running AC current. Topsy specifically had copper boots strapped to
Oh,
her feet,
God.
and had something like 6,600 volts of alternating current run through her body. But to make sure that she died, they fed her cyanide laced carrots before this was done in front of a couple thousand people and filmed. And he would do this all over the country. Now, and he's the one that's in our history books, not Nikola Tesla, a prominent
Actual, yeah.
immigrant who was a genius and surpassed nearly everybody in his field at the time. But he was an immigrant and poor.
Wow, way to ruin my day.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So you see why I left it out of my episode.
If you want a really light and fluffy version of that, there's a Bob's Burgers episode on it. Bob's Burgers
Okay.
covers it, so it's very cute. They do a singing version.
But the guy that murdered animals in front of crowds is the guy that's in our history books, not the immigrant. And if we can't have a discussion about why that is and what we're going to do to change it, then I don't see a point. Burn it down. Start over.
I agree. I think the levels of nihilism and apathy in the United States has risen. That, do y'all know who the largest voting bloc in the United States is?
No, go for it.
Non-voters.
Oh, that makes sense.
Non-voters.
Yeah.
I was thinking.
Yeah. And
People
so,
who don't vote.
yeah, people are continuing to choose not to participate in, their democratic society and whatnot. And how do we change that? How do we change the minds of people to not just, to go out and go vote, but to actually get involved in, politics and the way that their lives are run. And I've ran into quite a few hurdles in encouraging people into hey, like, this is why you should care.
How old are you, Will? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, you got to guess.
Mid-30s.
Yeah,
Really?
no, I'm gonna say like 28.
Oh my gosh, you're so close.
Okay, all right. So I'm in my 40s. Lily's in her 20s. You're in your 30s, 20s,
Late
20s.
20s.
late 20s. Okay.
Late 20s.
So right around when I was in the education system, still they transitioned from school from civics to social studies.
Hmm.
Now, if you just break those words down, there's your sort of your slippery slope of not being a practicing civilian,
Mm-hmm.
and then just studying society, social studies, and history was done. That's when it started to disappear.
No, I agree. I think that something insidious has happened. We've co-opted the civilian and replaced it with the consumer.
Yes.
And it's a really good book goes into this. It's Thomas Frank's "What's the Matter with Kansas," and it talks about the culture war and the backlash after Nixon and after Clinton and after Bush, and essentially we're talking more about people want to scream about Dr. Seuss and Mr. Potato Head, but they don't want to address what is actually affecting the economic material well-being of people, and I think this goes into corporate citizens essentially co-opting social justice movements and whatnot because it's good for their bottom dollar to co-opt those movements, because if they are good corporate citizens and they're like, hey, we're with y'all, well, how about y'all just pay us more? Like,
yeah. Pepsi doesn't need a Black Lives Matter campaign. They need to take care of their employees, and that's it.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Amazon needs to let their employees unionize.
So Jeff Bezos.
Oh, she's gonna turn red now.
Oh yeah. I do not order things from Amazon anymore.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't need my money. He has like it's $196 billion. That's insane. He could literally give like $1 billion to each person in the world and still be a billionaire.
Yeah.
Like You can't even picture that. Like, my mind just cannot fathom that amount of money. Like, what do you do with it? Like, what are you doing?
No, no.
There's no reason for you to have all that money. So, like, and he
Good
pays
for his
his
ex-wife,
employees
though.
shit.
Oh, that's right.
They do not, like, I was watching like a documentary or something, and they were talking about how when you get an Amazon order or you put your Amazon 2-day shipping in, there's a person behind that running around like a crazy person trying to get your order ready, not able to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Y'all need to do an episode on Amazon. I honestly do believe that Amazon is a hegemonic force in the United States that's building an infrastructure to essentially rival the power of the United States.
Oh yeah.
And, the typically antitrust policy in the United States was, any concentration of power, the United States was going to break them up. Well, it changed under the Reagan administration.
Goes back to Reagan.
It changed from concentrations of power to, hey, well, if it's good for the consumer, it's not a monopoly, and I honestly think that it is depressing. It is legitimately depressing. I have friends and family I've worked in these Amazon fulfillment centers, and they're like, hey, we get a good wage, but like you're saying, behind that wage, the increasing what is it? They've got to make their productivity.
Quota,
Yeah, and because if you do good one day, well, hey, you not only got to meet that the next, but you got to
do better. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the carbon footprint of that particular industry is astounding. Like just the vehicles and it's upsetting.
Also, Amazon truck drivers are the worst truck drivers in the world. Sorry, I gotta say it. They're always drifting into the other lane. And as a nervous driver, I'm like, get your packages in your lane.
No, that part is particularly insidious, the truck driving part, because the truck drivers, unless they're in the 18-wheelers, they have a CDL, but typically Amazon shipments are in those little Sprinter vans to where they don't have a CDL, and they're contractors. So Amazon doesn't have to disclose how many accidents they have per year, whereas
or how much time the person drives. So if you're a truck driver with a CDL, you have to be asleep for a certain amount of time. With those Sprinter vans, it's not that way.
It's insane. That's
Yeah.
I
Lucas.
I know.
I just looked at your face.
what the hell, my dad's been a truck driver his whole life, and it's the amount of he's got to get a DOT physical every year. He's got to, if he doesn't meet those requirements, bam, he's gone and whatnot. And it's I don't know what is the solution to all the problems we face, whether it's the monopoly power that workers do not have. Like, that's something about COVID as well that really showed that workers do not have any power within their workplace unless they have union backing. And I think unionization rates in the United States, I might be wrong on the statistic, but I think it's as low as 13%. Whereas, in the 1960s,
about right.
70s, it was, high as, 70% and whatnot. And so we've got to bring unions back. We need to for workers to have a voice in their workplaces.
And we
agree.
need to, as a country, pick one thing and fix it, and then pick another thing, and not scattershot it like we're flipping through the channels. Whether it's wage gap, whether it's unionization, whether it's any of the number of things that we've depressed your audience with today.
Yeah.
We have to pick one as a people, work together, and just get it done.
My question, I see that, but how do you pick that one thing? Like, who gets to pick that one thing? Is it like a democratic, like, we all vote, we're going to pick this one shitty thing that we need to fix? Like, how do you know which situation is the worst?
Well, let's ask Jeff Bezos which he wants us to fix. And
Yeah, right. Okay, he's our overlord and master. Let's
and
ask
then we
him.
do the opposite.
Yeah, correct.
Literally,
Yeah.
But I was talking to the guest last night, and we're talking about censorship in the United States and whatnot. And like, I'm a First Amendment believer. I think good in the ideas, the marketplace of ideas, good ideas prevail, and good policies prevail. However, people that are QAnon supporters that just want to, you know, go on about a certain ethnicity running everything, or that the election was rigged, or anything like that. I think when shown empirical evidence, they still don't change their minds. And the radicalization of our fellow Americans has become increasingly concerning. Do y'all know? Let me ask y'all this: do y'all know what the number one indicator is or was that you were going to vote for Donald Trump?
Income?
Well, so yes, technically, but what is the primary indicator of income in the United States?
Okay. I feel like I'm in a Lily episode.
Sorry.
Uh,
Now I know what it feels like. Oh, like, oh,
It's
sorry.
the primary indicator of how much money you're going to make is if you hold a 4-year bachelor's in the United States, not a 2-year associate's degree, a 4-year bachelor's degree. That is the primary indicator of how much money you're going to earn. And those who held, and not that people who have a 4-year bachelor's degree didn't vote for Donald Trump, but an astounding amount of people who have a 4-year bachelor's degree did not vote for Donald Trump. And so, and it's interesting because there's this divorce from reality, that what is happening to people that don't have a 4-year bachelor's degree is extremely concerning, because when we talk about deaths of despair, people without a 4-year bachelor's degree and only a high school diploma it is two different Americas. There's two different Americas of those who hold a 4-year bachelor's degree. Their rates of suicide are nearly negative 50%, whereas the rates of suicide for people who only have a high school degree or high school diploma is disturbing. In 2010, suicides in Kentucky were for every 1,030, it was 37 to 1,000. In 2014, it was 137 per 1,000.
Wow.
And that's like what is happening to rural America, to these people who don't have access to quality education, don't have access to health care, that don't have but they continue to vote against their own interests.
It's mind-blowing. You're like, what? Why are you doing that? Don't you want these things? Don't you want access to healthcare, and don't you want an education?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how they think. I just can't get in their brain.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm just like, I don't have a 4-year degree.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've got less than a 2-year degree. I took culinary arts.
I have a 2.5-year degree. I don't in archaeology. So like nothing to do with what I do now as a person in the theater, but I am a part of a union, and I used to work at a job that was so anti-union, and it hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm like, why are you doing this to your employees? Like,
Their training videos, there's
yeah,
a large
their training
portion
videos is huge.
of
Like, no union. If a union worker walks up to you with a card, and I'm like, okay, sure. Already part of the union. So sorry, can I double unionize? Because I would, like, and being a part of a union, I actually feel like I have a voice in my work environment, and I can be like, hey, this person was saying some weird stuff to me. I don't like it whenever I get on a Zoom call and he says, hey, you look a little weird today. And I'm like, thank you, lose 300 pounds.
What was the so what about the guy with the kilt?
Oh, yes. There was a guy who used to wear a kilt to some of our gigs, and he wore it the traditional way. And they had to make a policy that no man or woman could wear a skirt to said facility.
He was climbing ladders,
Because he was
right?
climbing ladders, and we do a lot of stuff up in the air, and
Lots of hanging out, I imagine.
yeah.
Yeah.
He wears pants now. He wears pants. It was the Utilikilt. Look them up. They're really cool. They're really
They're very
expensive. But like, yeah. So I'm like, equality. Yeah, no one can wear a skirt. But I also am listened to, and that's one of the things that is really important in a job environment, is that you're listened to and that your concerns are met. And I feel like if I were back in the old job that I was at and I went up to someone and I was like, hey, this dude's looking at me weird, they'd be like, he's harmless.
That's extremely problematic. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost like a domino effect of waving things off and kicking the can down the road in every
Yeah.
aspect of our lives. Oh, hey, it's not a big deal. He's just looking at you weird or whatnot.
Yeah, until
Yeah,
you
like-
give up, because it's pointless to you
And then you
try.
find out that this person has had other interactions with other women that have been negative, and you're like, how is this person still here?
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that I ran into this with I went to a doctor's appointment with my mom, and anything that she would say, it's not like the doctor, yes, he was listening, but was he though? Because he would then ask me the question, and talk to me about, my mother's, 62, and she's debilitating health. I mean, as you get older, your mortality rate increases every year and whatnot.
Yeah, we die a little every day.
Yeah.
It's just facts. Sorry, Lucas.
Leave the dark shit to me.
So actually, I had a similar thing happen with my roommate. She was buying her house that she lives in, and they would ask about her boyfriend. They'd be like, "Oh, is he going to be here? Should we get his contact information?"
Yeah.
She's like, "No, I'm buying the house. Like, why do you need him? I don't need him. I'm an independent woman." Like, and that's the thing. Because we have made it such a patriarchal society, we depend on the man of the house. The man takes care of us. So when, I'm assuming that doctor was older.
Yeah.
He was a boomer.
We're also assuming it was a man, right?
Yeah, it was
Yes, yeah. And he, in his mind, he goes, okay, this guy is the man of the house. I'm going to talk to him. So one really interesting society is the Jehovah's Witness Society, and they're an all male dominant society. The man does everything for the women. Like, they don't do anything. The man controls the bank account. And this is how the basis of America, that the man controls everything.
Yeah,
When
well,
you
the
get
man
married-
controlled everything at Jonestown too.
Yeah, exactly. But still, you saw them drink the Kool-Aid. They drank the Kool-Aid.
It was Flavor
Like,
Aid. Don't disparage Kool-Aid.
So, but that's the structure America has built, is that when a woman walks into a place with a man and looks at particularly a boomer man, he is going to direct his attention to the other male, because that is how they were raised. They were raised to talk to the man first. And we keep this going with societies like the Jehovah's Witnesses, like the I think it's the Jewish community also.
The Jewish community is actually quite
the Hasidic Jews, sorry.
though, yeah, the Hasidic Jews is a lot more quote unquote traditional.
And the Amish, and we keep these rooted and deep, and women have voices.
Yeah.
I'm a loud voice, but that's how it goes, though. And
This is a big part why I love doing this show with Lily, that we do, is
Yeah.
that, oh, and the sun's moving, so you're barely going to be able to see me now.
Oh, good.
But, I'm 20 years older than her. And, I agree with everything. And my wife is also an aggressive feminist. She's a Berkeley kid. She grew up in Berkeley, California. She was at the Reagan protests as a kid, as an infant in Berkeley. And it's very much part of her. And Lily embodies a lot of that same spirit. And I don't know, just getting to talk to somebody. Guys, I've kind of lost my thread here, but
That's okay.
this is a big part of why I really like this. If you watch Lily on a regular basis, she is a runaway train of
Oh,
power
God.
that really wants to fuck the whole system up, which I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I'm like
I think I just got put on a list too.
sitting next to my the patriarchy button right now.
I'm all for.
And-
I'm all for it.
And also, my healthcare is a human right button. I got a lot of buttons over here. I gotta figure out this situation.
I should have brought my out the door in '84 Reagan pin.
Yeah, you should.
Bernie Sanders again, and
Yeah.
not so.
Pin-based show.
Exactly. Let's say, hey, why don't we do that? We'll just start a pin-based podcast where
We just talk about pins.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got all of them like right next to me right now. Like, we're good to go. Let's start it.
I think I've got a box of like comic book ones over there somewhere.
I have a whole jacket in here that's just covered in pins. But yeah, I got off on a tangent of
No.
anger towards.
I think the sum up here is the country's broken. We don't know
Yes.
what to do, but we're happy to talk about it being broken for a very long time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can go on for a while, and it's a little dangerous.
The last topic that I'll cover with y'all. So there's a Gallup poll that's done every 5 years, and it's trust in the United States. And the one that just came out this last January is that Americans distrust the other party than anything else. And the distrust in government has continued to decline since I believe the poll started in 2000. The last 21 years continuously goes down. And it is extremely problematic when you can't even talk to your neighbor. You can't even trust your government to actually do anything. And the private market moves in and essentially is a body snatcher. Yeah, and like if we could start building trust, how do y'all think we could do it? Why? And not only that, why should we do it?
Why should we be able to trust our government? I mean, it's kind of cut and dry. I mean, we should be able to. And again, so the how goes right back to educating young men, educating young women on the truth of what's around us.
I think really I think we've lost the fact that we can be heard. So I feel like people vote and their voice is not heard. And I think that's part of why people feel so discouraged. And that's why a huge majority of the voting is non-voters, because they're like, my vote doesn't actually count. My voice will never be heard. And I think what we've done is we've educated them that it won't be heard.
Mitch McConnell makes $193,600 a year. That's his base salary, not fees that he gets from speaking, not anything else. And Mitch McConnell does nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And so
but tell us we need to work harder.
We look at a government and we're like, okay, so I work my ass off like 8 days a week, it feels like. There's, what am I doing that for? I got a notice from the IRS saying that I owed taxes in 2007. I'm 24 years old. You do the math on that.
Yeah. The hell?
Exactly. This is how broken our system is. Like, I could go on a rant about the IRS for quite a while. But it just feels like your voice won't be heard, and that's partly because we've educated our kids not to have a voice. And I think something that I'm really happy to see is that the Gen Zers are bringing, and the younger millennials are bringing a voice back. We're like, hey, this ain't right. Like, we should love everybody. Why are we hating? Like,
And it terrifies people.
And it terrifies people, and that's good. We want them to be afraid. Like, this is how we feel. We feel with your guns is how you feel with our love. You know, like, we're like loving them to death. We're like, just let us love you. Like corporal cuddling, with you do with your naughty cats. Sorry. It's an old video. I don't know if anyone, it's a very hard reference. Okay. Yeah. I just got on a like old YouTube just popped into my head.
Oh,
I'll send it to you, Lucas.
yes, you will.
To what you said, though, in 2017, there was a study done by, I believe, at the University of Princeton. Y'all can look this one up. That found that the United States is not a constitutional republic; it is an oligarchy for all intents and purposes. And for every piece of legislation that the people want, for example, I believe it's 67% of Americans want a raise in the minimum wage. Yet, I mean, that can't even get a floor vote, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
You know, same thing with marijuana legislation. You have a majority of Americans want to legalize or decriminalize marijuana. Well,
Not on the floor.
yeah.
Where is marijuana at in Texas, especially with what's going on in Mexico and them
On the
legalizing
streets.
Oh man, so depending on
it?
what,
Is it keeping that private prison industry going good?
man, it's keeping it rolling, buddy.
Oh, good. That's what I want to hear.
And depending on what municipality you live in, they will cite and release. But that's like 2 counties out of the 190 counties in Texas.
Yeah.
And it's absurd. I mean, I think the people have a general wisdom that we don't give them credit for. And it's extremely problematic when things that we actually want just aren't even, considered for a vote. And,
Yeah.
It's funny. I don't in Vermont you can have 6 plants, 6 mature plants. I don't even smoke weed anymore because it's all just too strong for me now that I'm an older gentleman. And but I have 6 plants
oh, wow.
because I can.
It's legal. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
legal. Same with Hawaii. My friend, like, I went over to their house and they would just be processing it on the table, and I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna go into the library. So it's amazing. It's just voices aren't being heard, and that's what it comes down. That's what the statistics say.
What'd you say?
What's this?
Voices aren't being heard. Sorry.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Hey, Lucas.
This was a bleak and depressing episode.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's
Sorry, we're cheery people. I'm honestly a very, very light and fluffy person. Really.
I like how in the email our correspondents are like, "Hey, are we a good match for you?" Because
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see the how the whole email thread changes too when I turn it over to Lily. She does all the heavy lifting and I just do the friendly stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, hi, when are you available? I feel like I get out my spreadsheet and I'm like, okay, and this person can go here, and yeah. Oh yeah.
Sounds like I've got a lot on your plate and everything. Let's end it on a positive note.
Yes, I like positive.
Is there anything positive that we could say about the current state of affairs in our education system, or economic system, or in general?
Current state of affairs just in the world. Something close to my heart is that we're actually seeing home gardening increase in massive numbers because of the because of COVID virus.
Mm-hmm.
More people are growing at home, more people picked it up as a hobby, and the ripple effect of positives from that, not only having your hands in the soil and reconnecting, but just doing it with your family and offsetting carbon emissions and things like that is one of the most
Exactly.
positive things I have seen in recent decades. So there's something that's close to my heart is you should grow your own food, and I believe everybody should.
Yeah.
Um,
I started
not just because I'm like a doomsday prepper or a hippie, but because I'm a little bit of both.
same. I started a home garden and whatnot, so
I kill plants. Someone help me. Someone
Didn't
help
I just
me.
give you some seeds?
Oh, those were for my friend who actually
Oh.
has a good garden, and
Okay.
like she's like out in the garden right now. She's like digging. I think she's planting carrots today, but
It's a little early.
that's what I said. I was like, it's really cold too. Yeah. So
Anyway, sorry.
I kill plants. Sorry. I
it's a
just
positive note.
yeah. Yeah, that's my positive note. I can keep houseplants alive. We're really good with the houseplants, the ones that just don't need a lot of sun or water or love.
Yeah.
I'm great with those. I've had a cactus going for quite a while, like 5 years. I think that's pretty good.
The desert can do that, Lily.
Oh wait, it's doing good.
I got my girlfriend a cactus instead of roses for Valentine's Day. Yeah.
Great
there you go.
gift.
Yeah.
Great gift.
Yeah.
That is an awesome Valentine. I don't like flowers. Like I'm like they die. Why?
Yeah, I buy my wife seeds very often.
Okay.
So
Okay. Hey, that's actually really fun and whatnot. Lily,
Yeah.
any positive note?
silence.
I mean, I guess I do have to say that the vaccine being free is one of the best things right now. Is it's free. Like my sister didn't know that. And I was like, she's like, I don't have health insurance. And I'm like, you don't need health insurance.
Yeah.
And I think that's an amazing thing is that she can just like go and get it. And she doesn't need health insurance. Nobody needs health insurance. You just have to qualify, which I think it's still good.
Yeah.
That is very positive.
I think that is a very positive
Our
note
government did
about
something for us.
a little tiny part of healthcare.
I'm not going to go into the negative aspects of that.
Yeah, there's so many.
No.
There are so many.
Well, no.
I was trying not to. I was like,
The vaccine being free, I can't, like, I'm not going to end it on a positive or on a negative note because there's a lot to that.
oh yeah. There's a lot. I was like, I can't.
But then, that's exciting. I mean,
Yes.
people are seeing that, hey, like, wait, no cost at the point of sale, like, really?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
And
I think.
exactly. Well, y'all, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up and everything. I really appreciate y'all coming on. This is fun.
This was fun. Yeah.
Hey, so tell the people where can they find y'all.
Oh, that's Lily's job.
Oh,
I famously can't remember any of the things.
At Partial Credit on Instagram, Partial Credit Pod on Facebook, and Credit Pod on Twitter.
What's our credit score this week?
Over 5 million.
Awesome. And we encourage emails. We like
We do.
if you know something just crazy that kind of fits in with a school subject or something like that, partial.credit.pod
.pod
at Gmail. See? Yeah. So, but this was great. I really appreciate you having us on. This was a lot of fun. Well, thank you.
I love talking to people that love to talk. So it makes for good time and whatnot. So hey,
Yes.
I do want y'all to come back on in the future, but it sounds like y'all got a pretty busy schedule the next couple weeks and months, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We're
Yeah,
trying to cram a lot in before planting season and before my opera season starts. So we're doing a lot.
Well,
Yep.
Hey,
We'll find the time.
exactly. We'll find the time.
It rains. It rains.
Yeah.
We'll make it a positive episode next time.
Yeah. Let's do positive topics, like cheery things.
We can just do a show on the Muppets.
Oh, actually, the socks I'm wearing, my gym partners say that they look like Muppet socks because they're toe socks and they're blue. They're like these bright
Oh,
blue.
you wear toe socks. I don't
I
like you
love
anymore.
toe socks.
Oh my gosh, dang. Well, I haven't been to a gym. Like I bought a home gym and whatnot, so I haven't been to a gym in like over a year at this point. I went to my first restaurant in a calendar year 2 weeks ago. So
Still
Wow.
haven't done it. Still haven't done it.
I mean, us Texans are fucking nuts, honestly. So
Yeah, I wouldn't do that down in Texas.
it's absolutely insane. It's absolutely it really is. It's
It's alarming.
yeah, it is. It is. And that'll be for next episode. Next
Yeah.
There you go.
I was
That's
like,
positive.
we-
Texas is
Yeah.
weird.
Oh, we could do Texas history. There you go.
There we go. That could be the.
Oh,
we'll
I
do
would
Texas
really
history.
enjoy doing a little research on Texas.
Yeah,
We'll love
Alamo
it.
and stuff.
Very rich.
All I really know is the stars at night are big and bright. And
In
that's
the heart
about
of
it.
Texas.
And that's thanks to Pee Wee Herman. Um, all right. Well, thanks again, man.
Hey,
Really
of
Thank
course,
you so much.
I appreciate y'all coming on. Hey, thanks for coming on the Undone Podcast, y'all. I really appreciate it. Y'all have a good night. Or day.
Yeah.
What the hell am I talking about?
appreciate it.
Take it easy.